Yonda pravishyamamavachimimam prasuptam sanjeevayadi akhila shakti dharasudhamna anyamsya hastacharana sravanattvagadi prananamo bhagavade purushaya dubhyam. So today is a very relevant subject, the spiritual legacy of Shanti Ashrama. Most of you must have visited Shanti Ashrama, and many of you must have read the well-known book by Swami Tattwamayananda on the life of Swami Tattwamayananda, who is the first Swami to go there and develop the place into a unique center of spirituality. And this year, we are celebrating the 125th anniversary of the founding of the Shanti Ashrama. We will have a big program on April 26th, Saturday, April 26th. It's a morning program right from 11 a.m. in the morning up to about 5 o'clock. So it would be worthwhile to understand the uniqueness of this place. So as I mentioned, it was founded in the year 1900s. Now, how do you call it a unique place of spirituality? When you're talking about legacy, you should keep in mind it should have a tradition, a lineage that followed closely its founding. Now, I shall just give an outline of how this really happened. Swami Vivekananda was at that time traveling, giving lectures, moving different places in New York. So there was a conversation between Swami Vivekananda and some other American devotees as to what's the essence of spirituality. So Swamiji during the conversation mentioned the importance of living in a secluded place, calm and quiet, away from social life in a general way. I mean, you don't, in Hindu tradition, an ascetic or a monk is called Atyasrami. Literally, it means somebody who goes beyond the social obligations or family obligations. He'll be left himself. So we have to keep that in mind. The first Hindu shrine outside Asian continent. Not only outside India, but outside Asian continent. So, what is the uniqueness of this place? So in the traditional Hindu practices, ascetic tradition or Buddhism and Hinduism, staying away from society, living in some kind of a cloistered place, without any access, any close contact with your family members, from your place of birth. These are all essential conditions. In fact, in one of the ritual that is an integral part of monasticism in India is this a homa called Virija Homa, very elaborate fire sacrifice. So they offer a lot of things, mostly bilwa leaves, on the fire by the monks who are going to be ordained after living a long life of brahmacharya. They practice, they take monastic life, monastic vows. So some of the mantras are very, very profound. I offer to the fire, which is the representative of the all-pervading Brahman, all my desires, all my connections, all my social obligations, all my relationship with brothers, sisters, parents, and all that. And also there is also a ceremony which includes offering prayers for one's own departed soul. Not only for parents and grandparents, but also because every monastic vow is the end of one life cycle and the beginning of a new life cycle. A new birth, a death and new birth. They combine together is called monasticism, we call sannyasa. The literal meaning of the word sannyasa is monasticism, means you are throwing away or you give up all your present life with all the other different aspects of empirical life, and you are taking up a new life. So Swami Vivekananda, in one of his conversations, stressed the importance of staying away from society in a secluded place, in contemplation and meditation. Then somebody suggested to Swamiji, and her name was Miss Minnie C. Book. It happened in the year in 1899. You have to remember, most of the transcendentalists have already passed away. And the East Coast was flooded with a lot of new ideas, floating from the East and also from Europe. Materialism, what we call radical humanism, Marxism, and evolutionist theories. Darwin's Origin of Species were published in 1859, and right from that, from 1860s onwards, the ecclesiastical, the Christian, the Abrahamic belief in a Godhead who creates this world was practically was disappearing from educated people, intellectual circles. So you have to remember this. That was before the First World War, which started in 1914, 15, around that time. It was before the Bolshevik Revolution, which actually gave a very diabolical political color to the humanistic ideas floating from Europe. So there's a very golden era. People were looking, intellectual people, educated people in the East Coast were looking for something new, something fresh, something liberating, but spiritual. They wanted to be liberated from the clutches of rigid dogmatism. At the same time, they wanted to get something that is spiritual. And then Vivekananda came in 1893 and they listened to him. So in one of the conversations, Swamiji mentioned the importance of contemplative life. And listening to this one American lady, Miss Minnie C. Block, she was a very generous person. She donated 160 acres of land in Santa Clara County. Of course, later discoveries and research activities have disclosed that land was actually not fit for anything. It was not meant for human habitation. Nothing will grow there. There was no water, no human settlement. No one could live there. So she was living in New York, and these 160 acres of land, she got it as a legacy, as a inherited property from where she was from a big family, large number of people, big properties, hundreds of acres of land in different states of the United States. And this California was not such a very prominent place in America at that time as it is now. So anyway, she was impressed. Well, this is the right place for monks to stay away from society and in meditation and contemplation. And Swamiji had not seen the place, so Swamiji accepted. And she was actually a very great spiritual seeker. So she wanted to make her own contribution to the emergence of a new spiritual culture in America. Contemplation was not new to Christianity or Judaism. Absolutely. No, there were Christian monastic orders in Europe, the Franciscans and the Dominicans, and in some other countries like Spain and Italy and France and Germany, to a much lesser extent, Britain, England, had many, it has a monasteries. And even in places like Spain and Italy, there were also convents where nuns used to live cloistered life. But America was a different place. America, after they came to America to escape from this and to do something really worthwhile. So that's how America came into existence. Adventurism, hard work, collective organizational skill, leadership, accepting anything that is new. If it helps you to improve your life, anything is wonderful if it can help you to make a few more extra dollars. Now, in such a country, after listening to Vivekananda, many noble Americans felt the need for a new spiritual culture. And this lady later on remarked that she felt a great self-contentment after making this donation. And Swamiji delegated one of his brother disciples, Swami Tattwamayananda, who was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, more of a traditional monk, almost the exact polar opposite of Vivekananda. Swamiji was a very dynamic person, with all the contemplative spirituality that was part of his thinking and thoughts and ideas. Still, Swamiji was a dynamo of energy, dynamo. He was exuberant, active, dynamic person. He was on a mission. He didn't have much time. He passed away. He was just 39 years old. Swami Tattwamayananda was a different kind of person. He was contemplative, a bit of a traditional Orthodox monk who would have nothing to do with too much of loud preaching, giving. In modern times, there are lectures like Vedanta in Market Street, Vedanta in Manhattan. You can find such lectures. Miss Tattwamayananda would not have approved. So Tattwamayananda wanted to present to America, rather Vivekananda wanted through Tattwamayananda to place before Americans a sample of the traditional Hindu monasticism. So he came to this place, Shanti Ashrama. And after reaching here, he reached this place at Antonio Valley with a few American devotees. And the first thing they did was to construct a small, tiny hut. It still stands today. And there is something very interesting about this place. This was the place which was used by Swami Tattwamayananda to do his spiritual practices, meditation, puja, teaching scriptures. And incidentally, some of the books that he taught in Shanti Ashrama, like Viveka Chudamani, is a very important introductory work on Vedanta, which is one of the most important books during the early stages of Vedantic studies. And Raja Yoga, most probably he was teaching Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Because Swamiji's Raja Yoga lectures were not available in published form. Swamiji gave those lectures in San Francisco, but its published form came much later. So he was teaching Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita. And along with this, he used to chant some of Shankaracharya stotras, Vedantic stotra, means hymns, devotional hymns. So he was presenting a totally different picture of monasticism. Vivekananda had already practiced all this for decades, but he came to this country to present a dynamic, modern interpretation of Vedanta. But at the same time, when somebody demanded a different picture of Vedantic life, contemplative, rigid, ascetic, world-negating practice. Then Turiyanandaji came. And surprisingly, if you read Rudrajanandaji's, Swami Rudrajananda, who is the head of our center in Paris, the Swami from Paris will be coming for giving lecture in our Memorial Day, when May 26. So the Swamiji, who was in Paris for many years, passed away many years ago, he wrote a well-known book, that is a biography of Swami Turiyanandaji. Now, in that book, you can find a lot of information. A lot of information came up later from one of Swami Turiyananda's close associates who lived in Shanti Ashrama along with him, Swami Atulananda, who was originally from Amsterdam. And he had come to this country, he was living in New York, he was inspired by Swami Abhedanandaji, and finally he reached Shanti Ashrama, lived with him. And when Turiyanandaji left in the month of June in 1902, he left Swami Atulananda, this American monk, as his successor. So, when we talk about Shanti Ashrama's legacy, what it reminds us is this. In the midst of all these activities, science and technology and all the different explosive developments, innovation taking place in the field of science and technology, there is still a place and relevance for places like Shanti Ashrama to keep our life in a state of inner balance. Swami Turiyanandaji built that cabin. Many of you must have seen, and you can see when you go there in April, this month, of course, this month, on 26th of this month, Saturday, you can do RSVP if you want. You can go to the website and do RSVP. So, that cabin has something very unique about it. Now, I don't believe in miracles. Miracles are defined in Christian theology as divine intervention. That's how it is defined. And even before canonization, there should be 3 examples of miracles in the life of a saint who is going to be canonized, declared a saint in the Catholic tradition. Now, there is something that can only be called and understood as a miracle in the history of that small little cabin that you are going to see on 26th of April this month. That cabin withstood 3 huge complex fires, California fires, 3 times. One in 1952, around that time, and then another maybe in the 80s, and another one about 3-4 years ago. Now, the fires came, the fires consumed the entire ashrama compound. All the buildings, wooden buildings they have constructed, were consumed by fire, burned to ashes, but this tiny place where this great Swami used to sit and meditate in his own humble, old-fashioned way, that still remains intact. This happened in 1952. That was long after Swami Turiyananda had left Shanti Ashrama. He left in 1902. 50 years later, this happened. And then something interesting incident is there. Before he left Shanti Ashrama in the month of June 1902, he went round the property 3 times and he said, for 50 years there will be no problem here. After Swami Turiyananda left Shanti Ashrama in 1902, Swami Turiyananda came here. About 7 months later, in January, 2nd of January 1903. And he was the one who built this old temple, and he started a printing press. He also published the first English edition, English translation of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna which was already published in 1912, and in 1914, he brought a new American edition from our old table printing press, Swami Tattwamayananda. He was also a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, who was sent here by Swami Vivekananda. When he came to know that Turiyananda was returning to India, Vivekananda sent Swami Tattwamayananda to San Francisco. So he was instrumental in building all these wooden cabins. A barn, a place, and also a place for the horses to be kept. He dug 2 wells. There was no water, no electricity. Even now there is no water, no electricity, no telephone connection, no mobile phone, nothing. So it is even more remote now than it was perhaps in 1920s and 30s, because there were so many wooden cabins at that time. And according to the Swami Rudrajananda, there were people living maybe within 3-4 miles, not too many. Some of the ranchers used to stay there. They used to come there frequently. But now the nearest settlement is almost 6 miles, 7 miles away. It's more remote. So Swami Tattwamayananda was instrumental in building many more wooden cabins for ladies to stay. So one of the most wonderful thing about the history of Shanti Ashrama is that when this unknown Swami, wearing a strange cloth, looking totally different, like speaking English language with a totally different accent, when he came to this country and talking about totally alien spiritual tradition, which is so universal, so humanistic, so compassionate, we looked upon humanity as one spiritual family. We thought that we should respect all traditions, all religions, all spiritual teachers we should respect. This strange doctrine was so warmly accepted and appreciated and followed and practiced by a handful of American ladies, not only American men, but American ladies in the year 1900. So how do you explain this? So maybe that's not even conceivable even in today's conditions. Because somebody coming with a strange doctrine and people with all enthusiasm following him to the top of a mountain, it is high in the mountains, to a totally remote place where there is no electricity, no water, nothing, and then learning from him how to meditate on God and being taught by him to respect all religions, all traditions. That is an interesting thing. That is the second miracle. The first miracle is it withstood, it remained intact 3 times when all the neighboring areas were completely consumed by wildfire. And the last time it happened was recently. Well, you may call it miracle if you want. That's a different story. Now, Swami Tattwamayananda brought a totally different spiritual tradition to Shanti Ashrama. Compared to Swami Tattwamayananda, Swami Tattwamayananda was a well-organized person. In his all his life and activities, he was a very disciplined person, very articulate, very well planned, very well organized, very systematic. Now this is not very natural for monks in any tradition. Monks want to be free from the laws of nature. Actually, monasticism itself is a revolt against all existing natural laws. They want to look upon the whole humanity, the entire creation, as one spiritual family. Normally they don't live in one place in ancient times. They go through these enormous ascetic practices. So, in that respect, Swami Tattwamayananda was the archetypal ascetic of ancient tradition that we read about in Indian classics like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and so on. And he lived like that. And about him, there is one more thing to be mentioned before coming to Swami Tattwamayananda. Swami Tattwamayananda, as I mentioned, he left in the year 1902 in June, and then he left for India. And Swami Tattwamayananda also later came to India, and they visited many places, Kurukshetra and other places, as a pilgrimage. And later on, he lived in Benares, and he passed away there. And towards the end of his life, he became a bit depressed. And the reason is this. Just before he left, a few weeks before he actually left Shanti Ashrama, it is said that Holy Mother appeared before him in a dream and told him not to leave Shanti Ashrama. If you stayed here, this place will be full of buildings, people living in this locality. For them it will be a blessing if you stay here, so don't leave this place. But he was adamant. He said, no, I have to go, because he wanted to meet Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda passed away in the year 1902, July. By the time Swami Tattwamayananda reached Rangoon, from there it will take several days for the ship to reach Calcutta, near Belumat. So when the ship reached Rangoon, he got information that Swami Vivekananda had already passed away. That is in the 1902, July 4th. So he could not meet Vivekananda. But Vivekananda came to know that Tattwamayananda was returning. So he already trained and instructed Swami Tattwamayananda to come to San Francisco and reorganize the center and also take responsibility for Shanti Ashrama. So, it's interesting that Swami Tattwamayananda, during the last few days, he felt a bit, well, I should not have disobeyed Holy Mother. Holy Mother came in a dream and told him not to leave Shanti Ashrama, but he left. So because of that, he felt that he didn't do what he should have done. Anyway, that's a different matter. After Swami Tattwamayananda came, he slightly altered the whole process of training and teaching. The number of Vedanta students who came to Shanti Ashrama from San Jose and many other neighboring places. Remember, at that time there was no Silicon Valley. Many of the places where the huge IT centers are located right now, they were all fields or swamps, not meant for human habitation. But still there were people who some of similar locations you can still see in Marin County. Anyway, so many of them came, and Swami Tattwamayananda made some rules and regulations according to the ancient monastic traditions, but in a very modern manner. So how you should get up at 3:45 in the morning, then you should meditate, listen to scriptural studies, then you should do work, building these cabins, cooking, bringing water, digging the well, the pipe system, all were installed by these hardy people, but men and women. And there's an interesting story. When Tattwamayananda first reached there, that is in 1900, he was really shocked, because in India, he lived in the Himalayas. There were still people around. But here it's a very deserted place, very remote, no one around, no water, nothing. So he was not concerned about himself, but he was concerned about the people who came with him to Shanti Ashrama. It's a very interesting thing. Oh, Mother, they will all die. There is nothing here. He didn't say, Mother, I'm going to die. No. He said, they are going to suffer. These American men and women who followed him to Shanti Ashrama to learn meditation, ascetic practice and Vedanta, they will suffer. But then one of the American devotees and a woman, she just emptied her wallets, and Swami, you can use all this for improving the facilities, and you should not lose your heart. Your faith in mother is gone. So Swami Tattwayananda later on narrated this story during his conversations with Swami Tattwamananda. And also after he returned to India, he lived for quite a long time. The last few days were spent in Benares, Varanasi. So during those time, he mentioned that he was highly inspired by the tenacity and on the old hardy stock who could fight with buffaloes and then harsh climates and made the railroads and make this country a prosperous nation in course of time. So he had a taste of that. Now, what is so special about Shanti Ashrama is this. This is what I wanted to mention to you. So Shanti Ashrama is a unique experiment. So as I mentioned earlier, though Europe had a lot of contributions to make towards monasticism, because it produced many founders of monastic orders like Loyola and others, St. Dominic and St. Francis of Assisi and many others. But here, something interesting, here he was teaching them Advaita. So that's very interesting. Though he was the temple, the shrine, Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, small little photos were installed. That was later, during the early phase of Shanti Ashrama. He was chanting verses from Upanishads and Vivekachudamani, and later Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutras. So he was teaching the essence of religion, the essence of all religions. The essence of all religions is you believe in one universal spiritual reality that is present everywhere. And then you turn the attention to yourself and try to purify our own mind, our own emotions, our own feelings. So if a person does that, then what happens is he becomes a truly spiritual person, whether he belongs to theistic or atheistic traditions. So later on, you find in Vivekananda's lectures, he talks about Buddha as one of the supreme examples of spirituality. And Buddha did not believe in a created God. But Buddha taught a religion that teaches us to be compassionate, to be, in simple modern language, to be civilized human beings. So all the eightfold disciplines, Samyak Drishti, Samyak Ajiva, Samyak Vyayama, Samyak Samadhi, Samyak Smriti, all these, what do you know, the right attitude, the right action, the right kind of word, the right way of concentrating, the right mind, the right livelihood, all these, Samyak use about 8 disciplines. That is the path that leads you to nirvana, spiritual liberation, according to Buddha. It doesn't talk about God. It doesn't talk about meditation anywhere. It doesn't talk about going to a place of worship. Place of worship and meditation, belief in God is absolutely wonderful and very useful for spirituality, spiritual disciplines. But it should not be a fanatical adherence or faith to one idea coming from one book that teaches one path, one road to that specific goal. Rather, human mind should be trained to be compassionate, to be drawn, to be contemplative, and to look towards the resources that we have in our own within. That is, if we meditate, if we practice all these disciplines, we can bring out the divinity within. Manifestation or divinity already in man, already in all of us. That's the definition of religion according to Vivekananda. The manifestation of divinity that's already there, and this divinity begins to manifest when we practice certain disciplines with regard to our talk, our action, our way of life, all that. Then we become good, humble, compassionate human being. We can't do any harm to anyone. because we understand the entire creation is one spiritual family. This was what he was teaching. This is what you learn when you practice Vedantic discipline. This is what you learn when you learn Vivekachudamani, which of course Swami Turiyanandaji taught. And we are actually right now we are continuing the discussion of Vivekachudamani every Friday, 7:30 in the old temple. So this text has a very interesting legacy in our tradition. Because the first great Swami who came to America, to San Francisco, who initiated Vedantic work in this part of the United States, and he considered this as one of the most important books. It is not a very huge book. It actually is not the most important book in Vedanta, but it's the most important introductory work for the beginners in Vedantic tradition. Because it teaches you to communicate with the divine within us, and also to experience the presence of the same divine everywhere, in everything, so that we become compassionate towards everyone. And the second principle that he taught was this, Raja Yoga. So this Vivekachudamani contains a lot of philosophy and idea. Raja Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, that is another text that he taught. Which in a way Swami Turiyanandaji continued. That remember, Swami Turiyanandaji and Swami Prakashanandaji, after that Swami Ashokanandaji also continued. And after Swami Ashokanandaji, Prabodhanandaji also continued this annual pilgrimage in Shanti Ashrama later on. It continues to our times. So it is a very, very unique place where the highest spiritual doctrine was taught, Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, and the highest inner spiritual discipline, practical discipline, that is Yoga Sutras. This Swami Turiyananda, when he was passing away, something very interesting happened. That is a very important, a well-recorded incident in Indian history of the great monks Ramakrishna. Normally, in Advaita Vedanta, one important dictum is Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya Jiva Brahmaiva Napara, Shankaracharya's great statement. The literal translation is the Brahman, all-pervading divine reality alone is the ultimate truth. Everything is only relative, coming and going. This is the meaning, the implication of the statement. This is the highest philosophy, Shankaracharya says. But at experience level, when you reach the experience level of this great doctrine, then everything in this world is divine. Behind the empirical, also there is the absolute reality. The absolute reality seen through the time, space and causation is the empirical, the relative. So, Swami Turiyananda, just before he breathed his last, in a mystical mood, he repeated to those who were taking care of, been serving him, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam. The ancient Vedantic statement, that Shankaracharya makes the statement in the Brahmastra Bhashya at the end of Chatursutri commentary, Chatursutri Bhashya. Swami Turiyananda experienced this as a fact. Everything in this world is divine. Not that the stone, the trees, the mountains, we are all divine as human beings. But behind everything and beyond what is visible, there is the inherent divine spark present in everything. And so far as human beings are concerned, we can bring out this inner divinity by living a disciplined life full of compassion, full of broad-mindedness, full of love and affection for everyone, seeing all as one spiritual family. So this was what he taught as a doctrine in Shanti Ashrama. And this is what he actually experienced as a fact just before he breathed his last, and which he declared to those who were standing around him at the time of death. So it's a very, very unique place. He didn't teach any particular religion like Hinduism or anything like that. You should change your religion coming to this. No, absolutely no. He was talking about a universal spirituality, which anyone can practice, and everyone should practice. That is, when we practice certain spiritual disciplines with the full conviction that the whole humanity is just one spiritual family, then we can manifest the presence of the divine within all of us. This is what he actually taught. And Shanti Ashrama is perhaps the first place in the United States where this message was delivered. You can find echoes of this message in the writings, very distant echoes of this idea in the teachings of transcendentalists like Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman. Because even in a book like Walden, it's all about Henry Thoreau is walking from place to place. He sees mountains and valleys and trees, and he has strong language to use when he heard the noises of American farmers trying to practice military discipline. They were getting ready, preparing for the Civil War, 1860, around that time. So he writes about it in the Walden, in the well-known book Walden. And he writes about the innovation, the assault on nature. Railroad system was slowly expanding in different parts of the country. He talks about, he said, it's a great intrusion into the serenity of nature. So Walden talks about it. And before him, of course, Emerson have written Brahma, which is nothing but an English translation of 4 verses found in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And also the works of Whitman and others. So distant echoes, remote echoes of Vedantic ideas, the idea of unity and oneness of existence, could be found in all these books. But Swami Vivekananda felt Americans should see somebody who actually practices this in the ancient tradition, in the ancient monastic tradition of India. So he wanted Swami Tattwamayananda to come to America. Actually, Tattwamayananda was not at all enthusiastic about the idea of coming to America. Swami Vivekananda used to use strong language. Hari, I am working, preaching, and dying there. Why do you? You had to persuade him. He was a very ascetic person, very traditional, very orthodox, a bit conservative in his habits, everything. So he came here, and the surprising thing is, he found these Americans living in Northern California, readily following him, going on horse carriages, climbing the mountains, going to Shanti Ashrama, and encouraging him. When he himself felt, well, what will happen to these people? There is no water, and he was, Swami, why do you lose your heart? You should have faith. And that was actually a great, interesting incident that inspired him, that encouraged him. So it's a very interesting place. I think, historically speaking, it's the first spiritual outpost of Eastern spiritual tradition here, because there was no Buddhist monastery as such even in those days. Buddhism began to spread, makes its presence felt only after Second World War. Of course, there were great Buddhist teachers like Suzuki and others, but a shrine where monks can come, monks, not just monks, spiritual seekers. Remember, it's not meant for monks or nuns alone. That's an important point. We call it the first monastery. It's better to call it the first Hindu shrine, so to speak. So, but those who accompanied him to Shanti Ashrama in 1900, they were living like monks and nuns. So, when you read Swami Radhajanji's book, you can understand more. So I was just trying to give just a bird view two great Swamis, and their names are very important to remember. One is Swami Tattwamananda, the other one is Swami Yogeshananda. Both were associated with Swami Turiyananda. Yogeshananda, one should not confuse with Swami Yogeshananda, who was living in Tribuco till about 7 years ago. It's another Swami Yogeshananda. Okay, so the Swami Tattwamananda used to be called Gurudas Maharaj, and Swami Yogeshananda was called Prashanta. Both of them later on went to India and lived there for a long time. So I just was trying to give a bird view of a very interesting place, historically very important place. It is as if, when there's a divine hand behind, whenever there's a crisis, a problem, like in the form of a natural calamity like wildfire, something happens there and the place remains intact. So I was just trying to give a brief introduction and description of this unique place. All of you are most welcome to do RSVP. We have a very big program, historically very important program, the 125th anniversary of the Vedanta Society. So actually it is also the 125th anniversary of Shanti Ashrama. April 26, the program starts at about 11 o'clock, and mostly you should be able to reach there by 10:30 or earlier. It will be over by 5. There will be meditation, lectures, puja, worship, music, flower offering, everything. You are most welcome. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I think I forgot to mention, you can do RSVP, you can get information from our website. You can also get copies of the invitation in the lobby. Thank you.
स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महिं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी सस्यशालिनी देशोऽयं क्षोभरहितः ब्राह्मणाः सन्तु निर्भयाः ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Now we have announcements. Next week there will be no lecture on Sunday since we will observe the 125th anniversary of the founding of Vedanta Society with a worship and an unveiling of a photograph of Swamiji on Monday, April the 14th at 7 p.m., to which you are all invited. So we are all most welcome to attend a short ceremony and puja at 7 p.m. We will be unveiling a photograph of Swami Vivekananda, which is historically connected to San Francisco Vedanta Society for a long time. So we will be unveiling the photo here in the new temple, April 14, 7 p.m. You are most welcome, Monday. So there will be no lecture next Sunday. Childcare is provided during our Sunday lectures. On Sunday evenings, there is an online class at 6 p.m. on the foundational text of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website's homepage as well as in the monthly email bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evenings, there is a scripture class at the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. The subject for study is Shankaracharya's Vivekachudamani. The class is also streamed. This is about the class at 7:30 p.m. at the Old Temple every Friday in the evening, 7:30. More information. This year, beginning with the worship marking our Foundation Day on April 14th, we will also have several other special programs celebrating our 125th anniversary of the founding of Vedanta Society. The next special program will be our annual pilgrimage to Shanti Ashrama on Saturday, April 26. You are all most cordially invited. We will celebrate the 125th anniversary of the founding of Shanti Ashrama by Swami Tattwamayananda, a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, with a puja, devotees, flower offerings, talks, chanting and tours of the ashrama. We will also have some guest Swamis visiting and giving lectures. Swami Yogatmananda of the Vedanta Society of Providence and Swami Shanti of the Vedanta Center of Dublin, Ireland will be guests. Invitations are available on the foyer and lobby. If you are interested in attending, please do RSVP on our website by April 22nd. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. After the lecture, there will be a Q&A, question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. Thank you.